Somebody would like to make sure their laptops are on mute, please. Thank you. IT, who'd have it? Try again. 1, 2, 3. It's still, I think. I don't know if it is echoing on the live feed as well. One, two, three, testing again. Yep, we seem to have sorted it. Thank you. Well done. Okay, no worries. Right. We will try that again just in case it was echoing and people couldn't hear online. So welcome to members and members of the public to the West Devon Borough Council Development Management and Licensing Committee meeting, Tuesday the 28th of February. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start off, because we have members of the public in the room. So we're not expecting a fire drill. So in the event the fire alarm does go off, please make your way downstairs and out of the building to the end of the car park. And the fire marshal is Mrs. Hall, who is sat at the end here. While this is a public meeting and members of the public, of course, are welcome to listen to the debate today, but unless you're registered as a speaker, then you won't be able to take part, I'm afraid. Please be aware that the meeting is being live streamed to Facebook and to YouTube, and remind members to please make sure you use your microphones when speaking so that it does get picked up on the live feed. Hopefully everybody's microphone is working okay. So in terms of how the planning applications are presented, we have a specific order that we work through. So the case officer presents their reports. We then have our registered speakers who will come forward as invited in this particular order. Each registered speaker does have a time limit to how long they can speak for. Then the members of the committee will also have an opportunity just to ask each speaker questions, just for clarity, make sure they understand. So at the conclusion of that, then we will then vote and come to a decision. So I would also just ask that mobile devices, if anybody has one in the room, please can you make sure it's muted so we don't get distracted, and also particularly for members of the committee that you have your laptops with your agenda, but please could I ask any mobile phones that you just set them aside. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And we normally have the cameras which would pick up our faces. I don't think they are picking us up individually, so I am just going to ask everybody just to introduce themselves, to go around. We will start off with the members. I didn't say my name, I apologise. I'm Councillor Julie Yelland and I'm the chairman. So if we start perhaps with Councillor Moyes, if you'd like to start. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Diana Moyes from the Borough Ward.
Councillor James Spetke from Tavistock South East.
Councillor Mark Renders from Dartmoor.
Councillor Rich Cheadle from Button, and I'm here representing Councillor Pearce from Merry-Tavy.
Councillor Nikki Hayworth from Chagford.
Councillor Terry Southcott from Bridgestow Ward.
Councillor Mott, Bridgestow Ward.
Councillor Leach, Oakhampton North.
Thank you, and I will then ask also our officers, please, to introduce themselves.
Nicola Glanville.
Jacqueline Houselander, Head of Planning for West Devon.
David Fairbairn, Head of Legal Services and Monitoring Officer and the Legal Advisor to the committee this morning.
Catherine Hall, Democratic Services.
Lovely, thank you, and we can hear the microphones are working as well, which is always good to know. Okay, so we will make a start with the agenda. So item 1, which is apologies for absence, Mrs Hall.
We have apologies from Councillor Pearce and Councillor Ratcliffe, and Councillor Cheadle is standing in for Councillor Pearce. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And declarations of interest. So in accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Does anybody have anything to declare? Councillor Mott.
I'm not sure that it has a bearing on this application, but just for clarity, I am a member of the World Heritage Site Policy Board.
Okay, thank you. And Mr Fairbairn, is that a relevant declaration?
I would have said, strictly speaking, not, but it's not necessary because it's another registered board, but it's fine.
Thank you. Okay. Item 3 is items requiring urgent attention. I just wanted to remind members there was some conversation at full council concerns about there not being another planning meeting until June. In your schedules that we were all issued at the beginning of the year, there was actually one penciled in for the 18th of April. So that one has now been firmed up in the diary because it's a long time to wait till June. So please could you make sure you just put in your diaries 18th of April, DM&L, and any site inspections would be the Thursday before, which is the 13th of April. Okay, so just make a note of them in your diaries, please. Thank you. So item 4, confirmation of minutes. This is of the meeting held on the 24th of January, and they can be found on pages 1 to 4 of your agenda. Any errors and omissions, members, or are you happy that I sign them as a true and accurate record? Yeah, everybody happy? Okay, thank you. I will sign them after the meeting. So item 5, which is planning applications. So this is application number 403422 HHO, Pump Cottage, Beer Alston, and I will hand over to Mrs Glanville. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a householder application for the construction of a attached garage to serve Pump Cottage and Daffodil Shed Cottage. The garage is to be constructed close to the boundary of the site, adjacent to the access road to the hamlet. I am presenting in place of Lauren Hutton today, who is unfortunately unable to attend. The officer has recommended refusal for the reasons given on page 6 of the agenda. The application has been called to committee by Councillor Blackman for the planning reasons given on page 5 of the agenda. The site is located 1.2 kilometres south of Beer Alston and to the northeast of Weir Quay, within the small hamlet of Cotts. Access to the site is gained from the road to the northwest of Lower Birch Farm. This is also an entry point to the World Heritage Site. Pump Cottage is not listed, but sits in rural surroundings within the Cornwall and West Devon Mining Landscape World Heritage Site and the Tamar Valley area of outstanding natural beauty. Pump Cottage is considered a non-designated heritage asset and is the first in a row of historic buildings with non-designated heritage asset status within the hamlet. This small settlement appears in the tithe map from 1840. The row of dwellings are former miners' cottages that exhibit outstanding universal value attributes. The site is placed at an entry point into the World Heritage Site within 75 metres of the boundary. As the World Heritage Site is a heritage designation of the highest significance, any harm to it must be avoided if possible, unless outweighed by public benefit. Pump Cottage is situated at the northern corner of the site, adjacent to the highway. Its main garden area is to the front and the side of the property. Also within the ownership of the applicant is Daffodil Shed Cottage. This is a seasonal holiday let, which is occupied from April to the end of October. Daffodil Shed Cottage is also sited adjacent to the road in the garden area between Pump Cottage and the eastern access onto the road. Both accommodations share the same parking area and vehicular access. You can see here the pink line actually marks the boundary of the World Heritage Site. So you can see that it's actually, you approach Cots along that road, so it's an entry point into the World Heritage Site. The block plan shows the existing shared parking area with access from the road. This has a gravelled surface. It also shows the proposed location of the proposed garage behind a low wall adjacent to the road. Daffodil Shed Cottage is shown, and on the southern boundary of the site facing into the parking area is a woodshed, which was originally approved as a carport under a separate application in 1995. Councillors should note that the repurposing of the carport as a woodshed has occurred due to the location and substandard size of this building, making it impracticable to be effectively used as garaging, hence the need for the replacement garage building currently before us. A number of small trees are shown on the plan, which are not considered to be at risk of harm. This slide shows the proposed elevations and floor plan of the proposed detached garage in relation to the adjacent road. The proposed internal garage measurements are approximately 5.1 metres by 4.8 metres, and it is 3.48 metres in height. It is to be built of vertical timber boarding walls and doors with a round profile corrugated sheet roof and UPVC windows. Officers have no concerns regarding the proposed materials, but are concerned that the location of the proposed building is clearly visible within the public realm, and due to its size, scale and massing, the building will have a detrimental visual impact, causing harm to the outstanding universal values of the World Heritage Site, rural setting of the OAMB and setting of adjacent heritage assets. Furthermore, the size of the proposal is not fit for purpose as garaging. The proposal does not meet the minimum internal measurements for domestic garaging as stated in Dev 29.2, the JPL, local plan. The use of the garage for parking vehicles is also compromised by the inclusion of a workbench that runs along the entire length of one side of the garage, reducing the internal space available for car parking. Officers are concerned that this substandard size building will reduce and restrict the existing available parking and on-site turning area and inevitably result in future applications for further garage buildings, as has previously happened with the former carport, now woodshed. To sum up, the key issues of the proposed development are the visual impact on entering the World Heritage Site and public realm, the size and mass of the structure in relation to the quality of the built form and the authenticity of the World Heritage Site and wider setting, visual impact on the ONB and green rural setting, visual impact on the setting of multiple non-designated heritage assets, including the host dwelling pump cottage, and whether the size of the proposed garage is fit for purpose, which could lead to further buildings being erected, as has already occurred with the existing carport, now woodshed. Councillors have already visited the site, but I have included some photos to give some context to the setting of the approach to the World Heritage Site and proximity of the development to linear heritage assets beyond. The first slide shows a view from the road entering into the World Heritage Site, and the second slide shows the existing roadside view of the site. This slide shows the hard-standing area of the former unauthorised shed that occupied the site prior to 2015. It also shows the previously approved carport building, which has been repurposed as a woodshed, and the gravelled parking area. Slide 11 is a Google Street View of the image of the former shed. Supporters of the proposal have suggested that the current scheme is similar to the former unauthorised shed seen in this photo, that the proposed garage is smaller than the size standards for domestic garaging set by the Joint Local Plan Policy Dev 29.2 and will therefore have less impact on the World Heritage Site. It is also suggested that the proposal will continue the existing pattern of ribbon development along the roadside and does not cause significant harm. In reply, it should be noted that there is no planning history for the former shed and officers have given it no weight in the decision-making process. The proposal is much larger by comparison, and as this photo shows, it will be clearly visible from the roadside and approach to the hamlet, non-designated heritage assets and the World Heritage Site. As commented on by the Council's heritage specialist, the public visibility and siting of the proposed garage particularly impacts on the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site. The mass and structure detracts from the quality of the built form and the authenticity of the World Heritage Site and the wider setting. Dev 22 requires proposals with the Mining Landscape World Heritage Site within the Mining Landscape World Heritage Site to conserve or, where appropriate, enhance the outstanding universal value of the site. The proposal causes less than substantial harm to the authenticity of the outstanding universal value of the site. However, this must still be justified and should be wholly exceptional. Officers consider that the proposal is solely for private benefit, with no mitigation measures put in place. This private benefit does not justify the long-term harm to the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site and is therefore contrary to Dev 22 and E1 of the Beer Peninsula Neighbourhood Plan, policies P3, P6, C2 and C9 of the World Heritage Site Management Plan, and paragraphs 200 and 202 of the National Planning Policy Framework. Slide 12 shows an interpretation of the siting of the proposal in the public realm. This slide shows the siting of the proposal in relation to the adjacent roadside. It should be noted that no finished floor levels have been provided within the application. However, as the existing concrete slab level is with the bottom of the hedge, the building height has been taken from this point. The horizontal red line shown on the photo should not be taken as a true reflection of the height of the building, but is included here to assist councillors in their own assessment of the scheme. The planning balance. As this slide shows, the planning balance weighs heavily on the side of refusal. The proposal will have an adverse visual impact on the public realm on entering the World Heritage Site. It fails to conserve or enhance the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site and is considered to cause less than substantial harm to the authenticity of the outstanding universal value of the site. The proposal is solely for private benefit and provides no mitigation to ameliorate the extent of harm to the World Heritage Site public realm and is therefore contrary to Dev 22 of the JPL. The proposal introduces a new domestic feature on the approach to the settlement and World Heritage Site, which due to its siting, size and scale will detract from the setting of the host dwelling and other non-designated heritage assets within this linear hamlet. Considering the prominence of the proposed building, officers consider the development fails to conserve the local character of both Pump Cottage and the setting of the additional non-designated heritage assets, contrary to Dev 21 of the JLP. The proposal fails to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the protected AOB landscape, as it does not conserve or enhance the character and appearance of the built heritage which is recognised within the Tamar Valley AOB Management Plan. The proposal is therefore contrary to Dev 25 and paragraph 176 of the National Planning Policy Framework. Officers conclude that the proposal also fails to consider wider development or respect for scenic quality and therefore is contrary to Dev 20 and Dev 23. The proposed garage is smaller than minimum internal measurements for domestic garaging as set in the SPD. The proposal will result in substandard size garaging, which could lead to further buildings being erected to fit this purpose, as has already occurred with the existing carport, now woodshed. In conclusion, this application is recommended for refusal for the reasons presented and included in the officer's report on page 6 of the agenda as being contrary to the policies listed therein.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions, Mr Glanville? Councillor Moyes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the screen quickly enough, but the little block in the middle, what is that of the left-hand side? As you look at it, what is that for? Sorry, the drawing of it. Yes, on the right there. I can't.
So that's a workbench within,
Oh, I see.
which runs the entire length of the garage building, so which would reduce parking.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Hayworth and then Councillor Sweatkill.
There's a slide where there's a red line across. Presumably, in fact, it should be a sort of pointy things, so you
Yes, it's probably not very, probably should have made it as a bit clearer, but those are two arrows, basically, to show
yeah.
basically where it's going to sit
So to
behind the
try and
wall.
assess how the
Yeah.
mass would actually look, it would be very
In
different
that
to that.
space,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's a special gift.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so to clarify, that line is vaguely where the ridge line would be.
I wouldn't take that as a true reflection
Right.
of the height.
Okay.
It's just sort of showing the space it's going to sit within. Because we have no floor levels, it's quite difficult for me to make that visual interpretation on a photo, unfortunately.
Understood. So my actual question is, could you just clarify the minimum requirements for size for a garage, please?
Yeah. So it's shown on this slide, the minimum internal dimensions for domestic garaging under Dev 29.2, 6.5 by 3.5 metres. I don't believe it gives a height.
Councillor Moyes.
Sorry, is the applicant going to speak or?
Yeah.
I'll ask a question. In your recommendation for refusal and further on, you do talk about the heritage statement that hasn't been included. I just wanted to clarify, was it requested?
I believe it was, because it's a validation requirement. But yeah, didn't have significant information to address the heritage issues within that statement, I believe.
Couldn't you hear that? You need to speak actually into the microphone, thank you.
I believe it was requested at validation because it is a validation requirement.
Okay, thank you. So in actual fact, talking about the minimum garage sizes, it is literally the length and width rather than square meterage that the SBD is referring to.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else, any more questions for the moment? No? Okay. Right, then I would like to invite it's Mr. Henry Thornton, who's the applicant. If you'd like to come forward, take a seat here. There is a microphone, which I'd be grateful if you could switch on when you come to speak. Playground voice, if you would. And you do have 3 minutes. If you've still gone over at the end of the 3 minutes, I will need to interrupt you to ask you to stop. But when you are ready, you may start.
Good morning. The reason that we chose the specific design of the building was in order to try and be sympathetic to the character and existing building styles in Cots. We're very proud of where we live and hope that we propose something that is not detrimental to the area. The size and location were decided upon with reference to what we required whilst utilising the existing concreted area, ensuring no loss of car parking and minimal disturbance to fruit trees and shrubs. There has been a suggestion, or there was a suggestion, to enlarge the existing structure, which for those of you who attended the site meeting, it is where the logs are stored. At present, this is an L-shaped structure. When we purchased the property, it was rectangular. I reduced the size for the sole reason that in its former state, only 2 cars could be parked in front of it without restricting access to the rest of the hard standing. The present configuration allows the ability to park at least 4 cars unobstructed, and as we have the daffodil letting shed, it is quite important to have more than 3. It would, of course, be possible to return the structure to the original size, but we would have to lose the apple and cherry tree that are adjacent to the proposed site in order for us to access the rest of the hard standing and maintain the current car parking ability. I would also like to comment on the suggestion that the proposed building will be seen directly from the entrance to the World Heritage Site. As a resident in Cots, thankfully, most people don't enter the World Heritage Site via Cots Lane. And the main access down the road is well screened from the main access by surrounding trees and hedgerows. In conclusion, I would like to say that we've tried to cite and design the proposal as sympathetically as we could, with the minimum of disturbance to the environment, utilising the existing concrete base. I would also like to comment that that red arrow thing denoting the height or whatever actually appeared to give it the same height as the roof height as the daffodil shed, which it certainly is vastly smaller than that. Also, I would like to say that we've tried to cite and design the proposal as sympathetically as we could, with the minimum of disturbance to the environment, utilising the existing concrete base. Finally, in February's edition of the Beerlink Parish magazine, in its penultimate paragraph, an article under the banner Tamara Landscape Partnership, and I quote, "AONBs are living and working landscapes, and the joint statement also represents a commitment to those communities. Caring for their exceptional heritage does not mean preserving these places in aspic."
Thank you.
Archaeology shows us how
Thank you,
these
Mr Thornton. I'm afraid your time is up.
right.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Members, any questions? Councillor Moyce.
Have you considered a lower level of the roof?
Well, the roof could obviously be made not pitched. It could be a gently sloping roof. Yes, it could. Actually, it would be cheaper and easier to construct it for me that way. But the reason we designed it as such was hopefully to try and be in keeping with the surrounding roof aspects.
Thank you.
What actual height will the roof be up to the roof line? Do you have those figures or not?
I must apologise and say I don't actually have those figures off. It's sort of about the height of a normal, garage roof.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's fine. I'll make it stand, but I'll come back to you on that one if you have that. And I just also wanted to ask you a question about the heritage statement, and was there a reason why that wasn't actually submitted?
I can only assume that because Mr. Maddock acted as my agent in this, he must have either overlooked it or deemed for some reason or other it wasn't necessary. I'm afraid I am not.
That's fair enough.
Not okay with planning requirements.
That's why you have agents. Any other questions from any members at all? Okay. In that case, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Do you want me to turn this off?
Yes, please, if you would.
Can I press the same button
Yes,
again?
that's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. I'll come back to you once we've gone through all the speakers, okay, for the height. So I should now like to invite Councillor Peter Crozier from BFO's Parish Council. And again, Councillor Crozier is a seasoned hand at this, but so for the benefit of anybody watching, he will also have 3 minutes in which to make his presentation. When you are ready, Councillor Crozier, over to you.
Peter Crozier, Chair of BFO's Parish Council. Madam Chair, I come here today to support the parish's recommendation. This hinges completely on the Heritage Officer's report. In it, he says the previous shed, which can't be talked about, was exaggerated. I believe he's exaggerated the excesses of which he complains he's trying to protect. This is... Yeah. I suggest that he actually complains about the... sorry, I've lost my thread completely there. I think he overstates his case. And this is a small development, a garage, workshop, whatever you like to call it. And within the World Heritage area, development is going to take place of some sort. It is a living place, as the applicant has just said. We're not in aspect. The size is too small. I had planning for two garages 2 years ago, and apparently my garages are too small as well, but they gave me planning permission in the AONB, just outside the World Mining Heritage Site. I think the position with the AONB is exactly the same. You saw in one of the pictures there of the site, and you can see trees behind on the further hedge. This place is not overlooked, and the picture from the street view cam is actually 7 or 8 foot off the road, and that gives you an exaggerated view. If there is a problem with the view from the road, which you'll only see it when you come past trees, etc., just on that part, and you'll disappear again, is it should be conditioned that the hedge should grow taller to hide the house, hide the garage. With that, Madam Chairman, I open to questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions? I do have one, which is with the, did the Parish Council take into account or have any comments with regard to this application and how it sits with your adopted neighbourhood plan?
It's consistent with the neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hayworth.
If this had been described as a workshop instead of a garage, presumably the size problem wouldn't have arisen.
Is that a question for Councillor Crozier? If that's a question for the planning officer, we'll take that at the end.
If it had been labelled as a workshop rather than a garage, we wouldn't be worrying about what size it was.
I don't think I can answer that either. That's the planners. The planners have put these dimensions in.
So I'll give an opportunity for some final questions to the planning officer at the end of the speakers. So, anybody, any other questions? Okay, in that case, thank you, Councillor Crozier, for your time. And I should like to now invite the ward member, which is Councillor Blackman, to come forward. And you have slightly longer. Ward members have 5 minutes instead of 3. But again, if you do go over your time, I will stop you. Okay, so when you are ready, next up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am the ward member who's brought this application to committee after reviewing the documents within the application. As ward councillor for Beer Ferris, I would seek an approval of the planning application for the erection of a detached garage in the same position as an original outbuilding, as outlined in the planning application submitted. The proposed materials are natural and sympathetic to costs. The statement by a consultee that it's the first thing people will see when entering the area of outstanding natural beauty and World Heritage Site seems to me ill-considered, and I would question why a previous outbuilding was not considered during the application process by the officer. A previous neighbouring application on another site adjacent was approved for 4 large garages using similar materials, which are in keeping with the current application at Pump Cottage. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Councillor Blackman at all? No, looks like you're getting away with a lucky finish. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We had a couple of questions that came forward that do need to go back to the planning officer. The first one is about the height to the roof line. Do you have that information?
The height is 3.48 metres.
Thank you. Is that about 9 feet, something like that? Because I'm in old money. Just over that, probably. Okay.
Yeah, slightly.
Yeah. And the second question, which was from Councillor Hayworth, was as to whether... Sorry, I'll let you answer your question, because I made notes and it don't make sense if you ask your question again.
I was just wondering if we'd be worrying about the size of the shed if it had been labelled differently, a workshop instead of a garage.
The reason for refusal relating to the SPD and the size of garaging wouldn't apply. But obviously, the overall scale and massing and the visual impact of the building is still relevant.
And we can only consider the application that we have before us rather than an alternative.
The fact that it had a workbench in it might help a little.
Councillor Enders, then Councillor Spetake.
I didn't do the site visit, so I'm all new to what's come up on here, so I haven't been able to draw first-hand and get a feel for it, which probably might change the way I'm feeling a little bit. But my question is, we've had a list, an extensive list from the officers of the reasons for refusal. If the committee would decided that we were going to go against that, we would have to, so this is my point of clarity, think of a planning reason as to overturn that, per se, not just an interpretation of the existing one. So I don't know whether that's yourself or whether that's David on this. I'm just trying to get my head around it a little bit here. Because we didn't have any planning reasons as to why it should be accepted. We had a disagreement with what was put up on that screen, which was quite extensive. So that's my question.
Essentially, we would need to show how...
That sounds a bit debatey, but there is a question in there.
We would need to show how we would mitigate the harm. We need to show how we would mitigate the harm, how that would be overcome, the harm, which is as described. Whether Mr. Glanville or Mr. Fairbairn wanted to take that bit further.
No, Chairman, I think you've said quite correctly. It is a question of how would you overcome the objections that have been raised, having regard to the development plan policies, because obviously that's your starting point, and then any other material considerations, and then determining the application in accordance with the development plan, unless those material considerations suggest otherwise. So, yes, you have got to come to a rational view as to how the harm, and it may well be that you disagree with the extent of the harm, but if you do find that there's harm being identified, that harm should be given significant weight in your consideration. It's not just a simple matter of saying, oh, there's harm, it can be overcome by this. It is something which does weigh quite heavily. So you do have to find something that was substantially significant in terms of overcoming that harm.
Okay, Councillor Enders, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I've got Councillor Spettigue and Councillor Hayworth.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Glanville, Councillor Blackman mentioned the lack of weight given to the existing structure on the site. I'm right in thinking that's a structure that doesn't have planning permission. The shed, I think it was.
Yeah, there's no planning history relating to that building.
Which is why no weight's been given to
exactly,
the structure.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It's just a concrete slab.
Yep, thank you.
Would planning consent have been needed?
I would. It's close to the road. It may not. It is within 2 metres. It's not probably less than 3 metres in height, but it is to the front of the building within the AONB. So yes, I think it probably would trigger the need for an application.
You, Councillor Hayworth.
To one side of the concrete slab, there was a bit of trellising with something like honeysuckle or something. It was winter, so you couldn't be sure what it was. And that, I think, from what I remember the site visit, was approximately the same height as the top of the roof line. I was just wondering whether, as mitigation, if they put a bit of trellising inside the hedge or so that to form a kind of L shape, you could actually pretty much obscure the shed from the road completely just by continuing that bit of trellising.
Would you like to say that one?
Yeah, I mean the application is presented as it is to you, and as you have to make a decision on what is presented to you today. If you feel that some planting may lead to enough mitigation to reduce or completely delete the harm, then that's the decision that you need to make.
If you just continued that trellising, you wouldn't be able to see the shed at all. Yeah.
But it would take some time to get to a height which would do that.
Any other questions, members? Nope. Okay, well, in that case, to move it into debate, I will move the recommendation as described. And just as an explanation to anybody interested, this is not an indication of a vote, it's just to enable it to go into debate. So the recommendations are on page 6, which is a recommendation for refusal. There are 3 reasons. I won't read them out because they're very lengthy, and Mrs. Glanville has put them up on the slide for people to read, and you've got them in your agenda packs. Is there a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Mott. Members, we are now in debate. Who'd like to go first? Councillor Mott.
I'm happy to kick this one off, Chair. It's a real dilemma, this one, because while I can appreciate the applicant's need to have a building in which to have a workshop, garage, come whatever, I am also mindful of the impact on the site, and having a quick scan down through the Beer Peninsula neighbourhood plan, it does also state very clearly in there that development should avoid harming the area's unique assets, as well as making sure that the benefits and the area of outstanding natural beauty and the World Heritage are taken into account. I also note from the report that no carbon reduction measures were proposed within. I appreciate that it didn't meet our own planning statement. However, it is very clear in the Beer Peninsula neighbourhood plan that all new development should be expected to contribute to lowering carbon emissions. Therefore, I would say that it doesn't meet that for the neighbourhood plan. Therefore, based on all of the information before me, I would find it difficult to support the application in its current format.
Thank you. Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you. Well, congratulations, Madam Chairman, for putting a teaser in front of us today. Because harm, I think, is often in the eye of the beholder. It's a very difficult thing to define precisely. To my own mind, walking around the site during the site visit, I have to say, I think we're shutting the stable doors after the heritage horse has bolted here. You don't have to walk very far. In fact, the first thing you see after Primrose Cottage, I think it is a garage, which certainly wouldn't have been there during the sort of industrial revolution or the mining revolution that took place in the area. So, and going further on, there's a cacophony of sheds and extensions and other buildings which seem to have no relation to the heritage assets at all. So, my own view, I will not support the officer's recommendation. I think this is a reasonable building to put where it is. I take the point also that there could be a bit of mitigation on trellising or whatever to further obscure it. But to my own mind, it's not an eyesore. So I shall not be supporting the recommendation.
That's Moyes.
No, I won't be supporting the recommendation either. This business about garages being too small, I can't get my head around that. People want a garage to do other things other than garages these days, and I think having a measurement on it is a bit ridiculous, really. When I came to this meeting, I was against it because I assumed the World Heritage site was far closer than it actually is. It is well shielded. I would agree that it would be a good idea if the hedge was allowed to grow, or, as Councillor Hayworth said, some trellising was put up.
Just for avoidance of doubt, it is within the World Heritage site. That pink line wasn't the boundary of it being outside, it's actually within. It is within the World Heritage site. It's not just sitting outside, it is within.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. No, the other way. Okay. That's fair.
An elevation.
Yeah, or something. Yeah,
can I just make a comment on what Councillor Moyes has just said about it's not a question of whether or not you disagree with the idea of a garage, or a subjective view about the necessity of garages or the purposes of garages. You do have there is a policy in the development plan which does indicate what the minimum sizes are, so therefore you should have a material reason for departing from that. So it's not a question of a subjective view that, well, a garage can be used for anything. It's been applied for a particular purpose, and therefore the policy is there to ensure that it is used for a particular purpose so that you don't get a proliferation of other buildings. That's the point.
Anybody else wish to speak who hasn't done so? Councillor Mott, you have spoken once, but okay, thank you. Councillor Spetake.
Thank you, Chair. This is a big question here for debate, but I wonder is there the opportunity to explore the idea of limiting further development on the site with conditions about further. Is that better? I wonder is there the opportunity to explore the idea of limiting further development on the site in terms of quote-unquote garaging with conditions.
Okay, just in case people didn't hear that, Councillor Spetake has just asked another question as to whether it is possible to condition against further development on the site. You able to just respond to that one?
Thank you, Chair. There is because it's an application for a garage, it's very difficult to remove permitted development rights from a garage because it only relates to the application that you are looking at. So if it was an application to the house and they wanted to put an extension on or something, you could then remove PD rights for any further extensions, but you couldn't really remove, well, you could remove PD rights from that building, which is what you're being asked for, but that wouldn't actually, it doesn't follow, so no, you can't.
Understood, thank you.
And I'd also like to just make the point that there's been a lot of talk about other garages in the area. They may or may not have occurred at differing times in the past, and they may also have not been the best decision that was made, and so therefore our current policies, the planning officer has examined this application in relation to current policies, current designations, of which the World Heritage Site is a really important one. It's an international designation. It's not, it's a really important designation. And just because poor decisions may have been made in the past, it doesn't mean to say we therefore have to continue to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moyes, I can see you want to come back in, obviously, to respond to something with that.
Can we put in a condition that the hedge should go to a bigger height, or trellis or something can be put up?
Choose to go against the officer recommendation and you want to approve the application, of course you can put conditions on of that nature. I would err against that.
Councillor Moyes came in second time because she had a question. I know Councillor Mott did have a hand up for a question. Was it for a further question for clarification? No? Okay. Any more for any more? Committee. Okie dokie, folks. In that case, we will take this to the vote. Just to remind you what you're voting on when I call for the vote is the recommendation is for refusal. So all those in support of the officer's recommendation, please show. 6, Chair. And those against? That's 3. Lovely, thank you very much, members. So that is refused, but I want to thank you very much for the registered speakers who came in and gave your time. It is always very, very helpful to hear the views of everybody. So thank you very much. Okay, right, so item 6, which is the planning appeals update on pages 15 to 16 of your agenda. This is House Land over to you, I think.
Thanks, Chair. There's only one appeal, as you will see in the agenda, and it's in relation to an appeal which was for Higher Wilmanstone Farm, the milking parlour, just outside Tavistock. The officer in their report recommended refusal for 4 reasons. The first one being that it was in the countryside and therefore not part of Tavistock, and it was, as a result, it was poorly related to any necessary services and facilities, and therefore it would be reliant on the private car. The second reason was in relation to the fact that it was a 4-bedroom house, detached, obviously, it was a single house, and that actually we're looking for smaller, more affordable housing within the Tavistock region. The third reason was in relation to the fact that there was potential overlooking and loss of privacy from the windows, some of the windows of the property to neighbouring development. And the fourth reason was the fact that no mitigation had been put forward via a unilateral undertaking to overcome the impact that the development might have on the Tamar Valley European Marine Site. The inspector, it was an interesting read, and the inspector decided to dismiss the appeal, but not for all four reasons. He was very, his sort of concluding paragraph was quite interesting, and so he dismissed it basically on the location and the fact that it was considered to be countryside, and therefore would be reliant on the private car. And he says in his final paragraph, in my view, and by reason of the scale of the appeal scheme, the benefits associated with the proposal would be limited and would not outweigh the significant weight that I attach to the harm and development plan policy conflict as identified above in respect of the location of the appeal site with regards to accessibility of services and facilities and without heavy reliance on private motor vehicles. So the other reasons, he wasn't convinced that a single dwelling would have significant enough of an impact on the housing need in the area. He also didn't feel that there was significant enough issue with the neighbouring properties that couldn't actually be mitigated by virtue of landscaping and what have you. And the fourth reason, he felt that whilst the unilateral undertakers had not been submitted during the application process, the appellant did submit one during the appeal process. So there was a means by which the mitigation could be achieved. So yes, his primary concern was with regard to location of the development outside of Tavistock and in the countryside.
Questions? Thank you. Any questions, members? Lovely, thank you. So then we move on to item 7, which is just an update on the progress of undetermined major applications. And we generally just go for questions on this. Mr. Cheadle.
Thank you. My eye was drawn to the fact that we're celebrating a birthday today. The target date for determination of the Plymouth Road application was February 21, so it's a 2-year birthday for not being determined. But my question is, given that the valid date is November 20, if it's not determined by November of this year, will it be out of date and will a new application be required?
Who would like to take that one? I think that's falling to Mr. Fairbairn.
I don't think it would. It's not the. There's been no planning permission actually issued, so time for implementation is not running. So no, it wouldn't be a new application. At the moment, we're still waiting, as I've said to the committee on previous occasions, for the land ownership issues to be resolved through the probate.
Were to stretch beyond November, it would require a new application, presumably.
No, because the application just carries on as being undetermined until the 106 has been signed, or the applicant decides to withdraw it.
Okay, so no. Okay, thank you.
That's Moise.
Yes, I see the list is dated the 3rd of February. Going back to Hazelden again, have these meetings with Sport England and the architects now taken place?
Yes, they have. Both meetings have taken place. The architects meeting that I had with them, they provided some minor amendments to the design. And there were 2 issues that were discussed. One was the actual design of the houses themselves, but the other issue was the configuration of those houses. The policy Dev 8 requires us to look at data to ensure that we meet local housing need. And local housing need in this area is for smaller properties and also for their configuration to be in a semi-detached or terraced format. That's the need. And so we discussed that at the meeting. They have submitted plans which don't achieve that, but do push them slightly closer together. So that's something that we are now considering. With regards to Sport England, the meeting took place and the question that was raised at the meeting was with regard to whether there's the statutory reason in order to consult Sport England in the Town and Country Planning Act. It gives if the sports field hasn't been used for 5 years, then there's no reason to consult Sport England in a statutory sense. So there was quite a lot of discussion on behalf of the applicant to suggest that it hadn't been used since 2014, but we had no concrete evidence to identify that. So we've now received an affidavit from one of the governors to say and to identify the last time that he knew that the sports field had been used, and that indicates that it was in 2014. So in a statutory sense, we probably should not have consulted Sport England. However, we are also obliged and allowed to consult Sport England if we feel that there's a need for them to comment. All of that information has now been sent to Sport England, and I haven't had a revised response from them as yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Spettigue.
Thank you, Chair. Just, if I may, just take us back to the Plymouth Road application. Is this meeting still being streamed?
Yes, this is a live stream.
So I'd like to clarify then that at the time the application was approved, it was approved, as far as I remember, for a C2 use. Is that correct?
That was part of it, yes, it was the C2, yeah.
So the question I wish to ask, I don't know whether it's potentially sensitive to do so, so I don't want to sort of stumble into it blindly.
I think it would only be sensitive if there was a named individual or contractual issue.
Okay, I can phrase my question in an appropriate way. My question is, as a C2 use, the organisations that I would imagine would be likely to be interested in taking it on, I'm not sure that, I don't really understand how they would commercially take it on as a C2 use. C2, it does specify residential and nursing care. I'm right, I believe I'm right.
Yeah, I think this is not an appropriate question for this moment. At the moment, we're not talking about the application. The item on the agenda is not about the application itself. It's about where the application is in turn being determined. We're not here to discuss the mechanics or the detail of the application.
Okay. I accept that, noted. Okay.
Okay, I mean, if you're a ward member, of course, then you're welcome to take it up with the planning officer outside the meeting if you require further clarity, or have a look at, oh no, the planning decision isn't up, is it? Or to look at the
I have
report.
many unanswered questions about this application.
Any more questions on the undetermined majors? If not, then that just leaves me to say thank you very much indeed for your time and declare the meeting closed at 11 o'clock. That's not bad. Thank you.